In ancient Athens, a man walked through the marketplace with a strange mission. He was not selling anything, he was not buying anything. Instead, he questioned people, politicians, craftsmen, poets, and discovered something shocking. The people considered wise were often the most ignorant. That man, of course, was Socrates, and his discovery is the foundation of today's video: how modern society, just like ancient Athens, started worshipping idiots, and how Socrates predicted this thousands of years ago. Today, we live in a world where attention is currency, and those who grab attention by any means rise to the top. It doesn't matter if they're wise, rational, ethical, or competent. What matters is how loudly they can speak and how strongly they can provoke. Socrates warned us about this phenomenon. He said that the unexamined life is dangerous, not just for the individual, but for the entire society. Let's begin with the first chapter, the rise of performative people. In Socrates' Athens, public life revolved around the agora, the marketplace of ideas, but even then, people were easily swayed by smooth talkers known as sophists, men who sold clever arguments for money, regardless of whether those arguments were true. Sophists were the ancient influencers. They didn't care about wisdom, they cared about winning applause. And Socrates constantly challenged them. He asked difficult questions that exposed their lack of understanding. Not surprisingly, they hated him for it.
Today, the sophists are everywhere. They're on TikTok, on YouTube, in politics, in entertainment, and even in academia. They reward emotional stimulation, not thought. Outrage, not understanding. Popularity, not truth. Socrates predicted this when he said, "When the public becomes the teacher, truth becomes irrelevant." This wasn't just philosophy. It was a warning. Because once society begins to value appearance over substance, the door opens for foolishness to masquerade as wisdom. And that takes us to our second chapter, the death of expertise. Socrates believed that true wisdom began with admitting your ignorance. "I know that I know nothing," he said. Not because he was stupid, but because he understood the limits of human knowledge. Modern society has reversed this. Today, people who know the least speak with the most confidence. The loudest voices dominate the public square. And humility is considered a weakness. Socrates warned that when ignorance gains confidence, society begins to collapse. And he was right. In the age of social media, everyone has a platform. This is empowering, but also dangerous, because visibility is mistaken for expertise. Virality is mistaken for value. It doesn't matter if someone has studied a subject for 10 years. A charismatic creator with zero knowledge can outshine them in 10 minutes. Socrates anticipated this dynamic when he criticized Athenian democracy. The people were too easily swayed by emotional speeches, too easily impressed by confidence, too quick to follow charming leaders into disaster. This is why he compared democracy to a ship whose crew demands to steer, even though none of them knows anything about navigation. Today, we see this everywhere: politics shaped by memes, debates controlled by emotion, experts dismissed because they lack entertainment value. We are drifting into a world where intelligence is mistrusted and foolishness is celebrated. In the next chapter, we explore how this led to a culture where idiots rise and wise men fall. In ancient Athens, Socrates noticed something unsettling. The wisest people rarely held power. They were reflective, cautious, slow to speak. They questioned themselves more than they questioned others. Meanwhile, the least thoughtful people, the ones most confident in their unexamined beliefs, rose quickly. They spoke loudly. They promised simple answers. They told the crowds what they wanted to hear. Socrates called this the tragedy of public opinion. When the crowd determines value, truth becomes secondary and spectacle becomes everything. In today's world, this dynamic has exploded. Platforms reward the fastest, loudest, most dramatic voices. Nuance is punished. Slow thinking is ignored. Depth is dismissed as boring. And just like in Athens, the thoughtful are pushed aside while the careless rise to the top. Socrates warned that this inversion is a sign of a sick society, a society that can no longer distinguish wisdom from foolishness. Athens ignored that warning. When a society begins worshiping those who entertain rather than those who enlighten, it inevitably develops hostility toward deeper thinking. Socrates understood this pattern better than anyone. He saw that once foolishness becomes popular, wisdom becomes threatening. The wise ask questions, they expose contradictions, they reveal uncomfortable truths. And the crowd does not like being made uncomfortable, not then and not now. Socrates lived this reality firsthand. He was accused of corrupting the youth, not because he led them astray, but because he encouraged them to think. In a society intoxicated by easy answers, critical thought becomes a crime. His trial was not a legal moment, it was a cultural moment, a society choosing comfort over truth, noise over wisdom, illusion over understanding. And history shows this pattern repeats endlessly. Every time foolishness becomes fashionable, the wise are pushed to the margins. The question is not, why was Socrates silenced? But, why does every era silence its Socrates? This leads us into the heart of the issue, the rise of the modern anti-thinker. In the digital age, loudness has become a form of authority. The more someone posts, the more confident they appear. And in a world obsessed with perception, confidence often looks like competence. Socrates warned that people who lack wisdom often compensate with certainty. They speak with an authority they have not earned, and society mistakes this for intelligence. Today, the anti-thinker thrives. The person who never questions themselves, never examines their beliefs, and never considers the possibility they may be wrong. These figures rise because they offer something easy, instant certainty. Socrates believed this type of person is the greatest threat to a healthy society because they destroy intellectual humility. They teach people to value confidence over competence, performance over wisdom, and entertainment over truth. The anti-thinker becomes a cultural hero, not because they elevate society, but because they validate its laziness. In such a world, the thoughtful person becomes a stranger. The reflective person becomes an outsider. The wise person becomes a threat. Yet Socrates believed something important. Even in a society that worships foolishness, wisdom does not disappear. It simply becomes quieter. And those who seek it must be willing to walk a different path. A path we explore in the next chapter, how to remain wise in a foolish world.